Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of FourCast is brought to you by MailRoute.info. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that provides enterprise-grade virus and spam filtering to companies of any size. Try it right now, absolutely free, at MailRoute.info.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast, episode 64. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And this is the show where we tell you whether the future happens the way we say it's going to or not.
I predicted last week that you wouldn't recognize our chief host of this show by hearing his voice alone, and I think this may be the first prediction that came true. I don't know who you are, Tom.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. My voice has time traveled. So you're hearing an older Tom Merritt, or possibly Bill Clinton's voice. We're not exactly sure. I'm waiting on my cheeseburger. I could try to do Reagan too, but instead, let's introduce our guest. Joining us, the hosts of the G-Men podcast, and first of all from DXStuff.com, Derrick, Chen. Welcome to FourCast.
Greetings and salutations. Really honored to be on the show with you guys.
It's good to have you. Also joining us, Andrew Hoover from the G-Men podcast. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's very hard for me to call him Andrew because I know him as Frontline99 from Twitter and have almost exclusively referred to him as that ever since I've known him.
You suggested that we do the entire show today by referring to each other by our Twitter names. And
yes, Extra Life.
I would be okay with that because mine's easy to say, of course, and spell and know what it is, but you still have that screwball D in the middle of yours.
You just say Ace Detect.
Yeah, that's true. All right, fine. Fine, I like your idea. Your utopian ideal for tonight's show, it stands.
All right, Derrick C82, or are you D-Dog? I don't know.
I don't know. My Twitter official name is Derrick C82, so, but you do know me as D-Dog from the chat room, so.
You need to get with the unified ridiculous Nick.
D-Dogs were all taken by the time I looked up.
Is that the problem?
I think I have to fight someone for it.
Yeah. Maybe you can seize it. Cease and desist. There is but one D-Dog. Let's start with a prediction from a listener. And, Scott, if I might prevail on you so that I don't have to torture the audience by reading it.
Yeah, and I would love it if you got to heal up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of it. We got one this week from Thomas R. Dunlap II. I love that name. In the future,
I remember Thomas R. Dunlap the first. Sorry,
went to college with him. In the future, travel by roller coaster, temporarily convert potential energy into kinetic energy, and then back again will reduce energy consumption. Work has already begun on short distance linear roller coasters in Japan. Of course, in Japan, they always do this stuff first. Simple calculations indicate that a frictionless, dragless roller coaster track constructed through the Earth from any point on the globe to another point of the same elevation would be traversed in under 42 minutes. Of course, few people would enjoy a roller coaster with a 22 or a 21-minute initial drop. Perhaps we could put travelers in some sort of sensory deprivation tank. He goes on to say there's also incredible cost of building and maintaining the tunnel. Long-distance tunnels would be limited by plate tectonics, liquid portions, is that right? Weird. Of the mantle and core, and temperature problems. But holy crap, what a great idea if we can figure out a way to, get people that quickly.
I need to do some checking on this 42-minute. I don't quite understand, like, one point on the globe to another point of the same elevation would be traversed in under 42 minutes. How far away are those points? I'm a little unclear on that part of it. But the link he's got is really interesting. It's the idea of, essentially you just use the roller coaster's momentum of downhill. So you would have put in energy to have a climb at the beginning, but then everything would go downhill. Now, it wouldn't be a steep drop. It wouldn't be a thrill drop like in a roller coaster, but it would you would use that kinetic energy to take you a long distance and save energy. Would you ride on this, Derrick?
I probably would ride it just for kicks, but I'm thinking of all the people who can't ride it, because every time you're on the roller coaster, you say if you're pregnant, if you're under this height, if you're have a heart condition, and
well,
I meet the profile right now.
That restriction might be different because you're not going up high and you're not going at these like crazy drop speeds. But you may be right. You may not be able to get around it for some people, like heart conditions. Maybe, I don't know.
But wouldn't it be? It'd be more like you're gonna like Derrick wouldn't be the guy riding it so much. It would be the thing he's in that's taking the ride. In other words, it'd be some kind of sort of enclosed train-like environment that is the thing that is taking the ride. And so you're just feeling like you're on an airplane or any other kind of moving vehicle or even a train, where eventually, at least after the initial push, you're not experiencing the big fall. You're kind of going right along with it, like a car at high speed or anything else. So it seems like that stuff would be taken care of just by the fact that you're not. It's not like they're going to sit you in a cart and put a bar down and say, "Hold on." And
yeah, you wouldn't be open air. You're right, Scott.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, just a thought, but I don't know. I mean, Andrew, how do you feel about roller coasters? Essentially, a roller coaster as a mode of transportation.
Well, I like the idea that we're not expending tons of energy to keep this thing moving, but I was a little bit confused on that too. Like we were talking about just a train with no top on it or something like that. But no, the idea of using the momentum, I think that's a unique idea. So I could get behind that. I'm a coaster enthusiast, so I could get behind that.
But to Tom's point, I don't see how, like, for example, if I start a plane ride from Salt Lake City, Utah, where I am, and I want to go to New York, okay, let's say that however it's configured, that's a 42-minute drive or a 42-minute ride or under. But for me to go to,
that
I
can't
don't know,
possibly
Russia,
be right. 42
Europe,
minutes from Salt Lake to New York, that just...
Well, even that, though, but then you say, well, if that's true of any other point of equal elevation in the world, I can't go to India in 42 minutes if it took that long to get to New York.
When he's saying you're drilling, he seems to imply that you're drilling through the core to get from one point to the other.
Oh.
That's the whole thing with the magma and everything.
That would require a lot of tunnels then. Because kind of what he's saying is any point to any point, but you would have a finite number of points. Like there's not going to be a station in everybody's bedroom, I hope.
I mean, he's saying a frictionless, dragless roller coaster track, which is also impossible. There's always going to be friction, exactly.
Yeah.
But
you can. Anyway, fascinating idea, though. I love this kind of stuff. So thanks, Thomas R. Dunlap, II.
All right, let's get into our short-term predictions. These are things you think will happen sooner maybe than later. And we'll start with you, Derrick. When you look into your short-term crystal ball, what do you see?
So what I actually see is maybe I'm thinking that in maybe the next 50 years, we're going to actually see pretty much more states to the United States. We're going to see a bunch of secession movements within the United States. And not that we separate from the United States itself, but I mean, we'll have additional states coming out of the states that we have right now.
We've had this happen once. That's how we got West Virginia. It happened because of the Civil War, but West Virginia used to be part of Virginia. During the Civil War, they stayed part of the North and separated from Virginia afterwards.
Exactly. And I think that right now, I don't know, I mean, we haven't had a new state since 1959 with Alaska and Hawaii. And I feel like there might be almost a mental barrier where, 50 is such a nice, even number. And I think maybe after Puerto Rico eventually comes in, I think we're going to actually see pretty much new states coming out of cities, specifically like New York, Los Angeles. I've gotten to live in both cities, and I just see such a big a lot of tension pretty much coming out of, big cities, major urban centers, and I guess the overall state government, which usually for California and New York has been really kind of outside of the state. So you have Albany, you have Sacramento, and just like in New York City, there's this big thing where, I think the Mayor Bloomberg had said that we give the state $11 billion more than we get back. And it's just, there's so many different interests that we see coming out of the suburbs. In LA as well, when I lived there, you had people in the OC which cared more about building freeways, while in the city of Los Angeles itself, they were trying to build more mass transit options. And you had this whole issue of where's the money going, where's the budget going? And I think as we're going through this economic depression where every dollar is counting now and we can't just give freely, I think you're going to see more and more battles between urban centers and state legislatures. So
this is interesting because what you're saying is, and I think I agree with this, there's a mental and perhaps cultural block in our heads that says, 50 is it. Like somehow that's some magic number. It's like the Constitution. It doesn't change. And we're a generation out of when the last one was added, so we really don't think of that being recent history. We think of 50 as being like this set in stone thing. What do you think it takes to get that mindset to change? Because it seems to me if New York or let's pick any city, let's say Chicago says, you know, all that farmland, they're not contributing anything but the city. I mean, we're really the major source of revenue. We're not getting back what we need. So here in Chicago, Illinois, we're now going to be Chicago, the state, and here's comes number 51. What is it that, because I feel like everybody, even I had a little culture shock when you said it. When you said, well, more states than the 50 we have. In my head, I went, you can't do that. And then I asked myself, well, why can't you do that? And the answer is, well, of course you can. You could do that, but it seems weird to do it. So how do you get over that blockade of like sort of cultural resistance to the idea of more than 50 states?
Well, I think the 50 states, I think, will be with, I think that will be maybe with Puerto Rico. I mean, that's the best chance we have of getting an additional state where they're actually, I think, is it every 2 years or something, they actually, I guess, ask the population whether or not they want to apply for statehood or not. So depending where that swings, I mean, maybe there might be different factors that push them over the edge. I think it's getting, once that mental barrier gets passed, I think, you know, between that and just the economic situation we're in, I think that's what's really going to push, you know, cities like New York and LA to do it. And I mean, you see that in other countries. I mean, whether it's China, France, or whatever, you do see major cities bring their own kind of state or territory, not, you know, combined with, you know, I guess a greater state, just because the needs of a urban center are so much different than what it is outside, especially compared to the suburbs.
And yet most of the secession movements, and there are secession movements in the United States, they're usually very small, but most of them are in rural areas who are upset at the dominance of a city in politics. So Western Kansas, for instance, because of Kansas City's dominance of politics, Western Kansas has talked about seceding. Northern California, north of San Francisco, not including San Francisco, has a Redwood Republic secessionist movement. There's a few others here and there. Actually, northwestern Illinois, around Galesburg, has talked about separating from the rest of Illinois before. The problem with that is that all the money is in those city areas and all the political leverage is in those city areas. And I don't see the cities wanting to remove themselves from the state. It's the other part of the state that wants to remove themselves from the city. So how does it shift, or how does it happen that the city decides we're going to separate from the rest of the state?
Well, I just find it that at least maybe in New York City, at least, it seems to be a really big uphill battle where we're contributing tons of taxes and we're definitely putting a lot of money in. But I mean, especially as we were seeing a lot of wealthier suburbs kind of build around the cities now, they aren't part of New York City. So you have, whether it's Long Island, upstate, Connecticut, all these other areas that are they have a lot of, I guess, political influence, especially, again, to the upstate areas where I think we do see that shift where maybe you do have a lot of power, not necessarily from the state itself, but from, you know, it's not the rural area, it's not the urban area, it's the suburban area. So I think that, at least in parts of California and New York, that's what I feel like is going on. And I feel like as we're starting to see these different interests, you know, going on, and, you know, with New York, we're trying to build more bike lanes, and yet, you know, yet people from the suburbs hate bike lanes because it's, you know, causing more difficulty for people to drive in the city. There's parking problems, and you just see a lot of, I guess just a collision between. I think that over time, I think we're going to continue to see it develop and evolve over time. That I think it's going to eventually blow up.
It'll be really interesting if that sort of thing happens and your prediction comes true. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. Like, is it a violent separation? Do we figure out a way that cities can do this, or whatever can do this? If a huge farming community feels like it has enough resources to be its own state, for example, do they rise up with pitchforks and fight for it? Do they stand up in the state Senate and go, we're doing this thing, and there's some kind of provision in the federal government that protects them immediately and gives them statehood? I mean, obviously,
and I think that's another mental barrier too. Is the word secession always has that negative meaning? Because what do we think of? We think of the Civil War right away, and we think of, you know, like seceding. You know, like, you can't do that. And I think, you know, there's a lot of connotation. I think, you know, it has to come to a point where people want it that badly, where they're really just tired of kind of, I guess, the imbalances within just the state government itself. That, you know, we're not seceding from the country. We're still part of the United States, but, you know, we need to we need a more localized government to address the concerns of this local community, even if it's a large city.
You've got to convince the state legislature and the federal Congress to approve it, and those are both huge barriers. Those are tall orders, especially Congress. Congress doesn't have any incentive to change anything within a state, so it would take a huge thing. Andrew, do you think this has any chance of happening? Do you see this happening as well? What do you think?
I think it's a definite possibility. Like we do kind of get complacent with the status quo and the way things have been, and we kind of just take for granted that things are always going to be this way, that there's never going to be, that kind of change, when really the entire existence of this country came about because there was a massive revolution, and people decided that they wanted to change the way things were, and that's what they did. As far as the like smaller, cities thinking, like he made the example of New York City costing, being a part of New York is kind of costing them money. And we've seen this before, not in North America, but in South America. That's how we got Chile, right? Was the Argentinian government just got sick of paying for all the national disasters that kept occurring on the coast. So they just kind of cut it loose and let it go and made it its own government to save it, essentially just to save itself the money that it was spending to repair that portion of itself.
So there's the lesson for those areas that would like to secede. Have a lot of natural disasters. Be costly. Maybe not natural disasters, but be costly. Be not worth it. But the problem is, then, can these states be self-sufficient? Big states like California and Texas have huge money problems right now. Can you imagine what the money problems would be of a Western Kansas or a Western Washington if they didn't have the tax base of the cities to draw on?
But I think at the same time, maybe the needs of that state might be, I don't know, it might be different in terms of, in terms of the drain that's needed. Like why is part of Albany paying for subway service in Manhattan, and why is Manhattan paying for roads in Rochester? I think
socialism.
I think it makes more sense that maybe once you have a local government that's much better at managing funds, because right now the biggest problem is that you're having money go all over the place, and it's really hard to really, I guess, allocate resources in the way that it should be, and you have money, just going left and right, back and forth. And I think it's just making it a lot more complicated. We're getting a lot of waste. You're going through a lot of middlemen. And I think once you remove that, I think it might be a lot easier to for each region to address their own issues.
My only problem with your idea is that I'm for the reunification of the colonies with the United Kingdom. So
that would be fun.
I think that's more of a priority right now. Let's move over to your short-term predictions, Andrew. Secessions or not, what do you see?
Well, mine is kind of an uprising of the same sort, but I think what we're going to see is kind of a dismantling of this kind of big business corporate culture that we have. So something that we've seen the last few years, technology has really helped, especially in the media side of things. People can now produce music, produce television to the same quality that it used to require a huge network with tons of funding to do. Now you can kind of do this on your own. I think, Twit is a great example of this. And I think as this goes on and technology increases, we're going to start to see this spread into other areas like manufacturing. At CES, there was the MakerBot was there, and people were able to just print out whatever objects. And it's totally conceivable to see someone having a small business that could really compete with larger companies that they never would have been able to compete with because of this technology, because of the ability to produce things on a small scale at a reasonable cost.
Yeah,
so,
I'm with you on this completely. My entire, like the illustration side of the work I do, the entire thing is based on the fact that we now live in a time where I can, without paper and raw materials, create the same kind of work I could have with those things, do it all digitally, have the thing in the hands of a printer 2 minutes after I'm finished with it, and have a 20 by 30 inch print in my hand and ready to sell later that afternoon, and do all the fulfillment myself. That stuff would have been impossible 15 years ago for an individual to do. And it would have cost a lot more to go out and get the things done you needed to do. And I'm doing it all online. It's all very quick. The transaction for people buying stuff to me making it, to me printing it, to me getting it to them is very short and very concise. And if that feels like an interim step toward what will be next, which it kind of goes along. We've had predictions on the show before about car parts being manufactured in such a way that you could walk into a store and say, well, I've got a 1979 Buick, whatever, and they could just poop the part out of some machine while you're sitting there waiting for for cheap, or even the idea that you could build new cars out of component pieces that you would buy yourself and sort of build your own car. That stuff does not seem that far off to me. And what you're saying about individuals or smaller groups being able to do things in manufacturing and reproduction and fabrication that only big companies heretofore have been able to do is not far-fetched at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, we see a lot of things. The example that comes to mind is VHS versus beta, right? The VHS was clearly not the best technology, but it had the most power behind it. And so that's the one that won. And we see that a lot of times where there's, much better technology out there, but it loses out because, the manufacturer doesn't have the marketing power to put behind it. And now, with the internet, everybody can have a presence. Everyone can get their ideas heard.
Are you just kissing up to us?
Well, I heard you're expanding, and I'm not that far away from Petaluma. But...
Well, that's the thing is I actually did an interview with a television channel, Wealth TV, yesterday. Even though I probably shouldn't qualify for anything called Wealth TV, but they are an interesting cable channel because they don't have a lot of distribution, and they're broadcasting in 3D, and they're available a la carte on the Roku player. So they're kind of one of the first cable channels to start to take their toe and dip it into this universe. And we've seen a lot of people, Revision 3, Twit, Next New Networks, Federated, lots of folks going the other way, saying, we need to find distribution on platforms that you can watch on television. And one of the things I was talking about with them was, what is the future of this? Where does it all go? And I think it always ends up being not one side winning or the other, but, some of these small startup online channels are going to survive, and some of the big media companies are going to go away, and the ones that survive from the small internet video get bigger and start spreading out on the new platform, whatever that ends up being. And the big media folks that stick around, they successfully make the transition to this new platform. But it's all about the new platform. I don't think the model changes entirely, but I think we get an entirely different way of consuming it. So hopefully what we get rid of is the wastage, the channels that really are only carried because somebody can make a cable company carry them. In the new platform, you're going to have to exist on getting people to actually watch your channel.
Yeah, I mean, does the travel channel simply exist in that future? Probably not. Do these smaller, niche channels exist, at least in its current universe in big media? Probably not. Could they exist in a much more streamlined, maybe even smaller but more lean distribution that you may see starting on the web now and hitting whatever platform you're talking about? But it just seems like we're at a weird interim point. Like, we're all super stoked about things in 2005 when podcasting hit. That seemed really, really out there and really pushing this new way of consuming information. And what we do now with web video and stuff seems really cutting edge. But I always get this feeling in my gut that we are at a weird crossroads, like a middle point, kind of like whether or not you should get a regular TV or 3D TV, and knowing that either one of those two things are going to be completely obsoleted by whatever replaces them both. It kind of feels like we're at that stage. Does that seem crazy to everyone else? Like, Andrew, do you feel like I don't think we're like, we found ourselves, this is it. We found a doorway. We found all the gateways to get in. But I feel like the ultimate prize is, some years off.
Yeah, if you ask me what television station I think, what network is going to be the biggest, in 5 years, I honestly think it could be YouTube. Like, I think that YouTube could maybe be, with the power of Google behind it, this could be the place where, that seed of, the a la carte television, comes to fruition. Like we've seen that, Hulu would be great, except, it's got that anchor of the old media, weighing it down, keeping it from really going anywhere. Whereas, YouTube, I think, has enough mojo to be able to say, why don't you give us, this show or that show? And maybe it's not from one of the major networks. Maybe it's, sci-fi, because maybe that's the audience, and if it catches on there, it's that first step. So no, I think that's, I think that, Scott, you're exactly right.
I like to be exactly right.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all very, very interesting. I just feel like I don't know when this in-between period ends, but and we're all having a ball doing it, and I can't wait to see what's next. But
well, I don't think we've reached the apex yet. I think that all of these televisions with internet connectivity, combined with the kind of narrowing in on that one box that will get you internet video on your television. And I'm not sure which way it's going to go, whether it's built into the TV or whether it's a set-top box. There's good arguments on both sides. But I'd say probably within 2 years, we will know where that's going. And that's when this is really going to be make or break. That's when this is really going to take off. That's when people will suddenly discover that internet video is something they can watch whenever they want. And that is going to change everything. There's going to be a huge revolution in that, because the cable companies that are going to survive are going to be the ones that do it well, that integrate with it. Whether it's a cable company that comes out with that one box because they back off from their own model and make it work so that you can watch whatever you want, or whether it's a cable company that decides to embrace the box. Maybe it's a Roku or a TiVo or something like that. Charter just signed with TiVo to be their set-top box provider. It's probably going to be one of the smaller companies that leads the way, one of the smaller cable companies that leads the way, and then it's going to shake the industry to its core. And when you know it's hitting the top is when everybody is watching it. And that's when the new stars will be made or break. This is what happened to the web in the late 90s. And Amazon and eBay and Yahoo survived and made it out, although there were millions of websites that didn't. That's going to happen again with video. We're going to see these millions of streams out there that are suddenly going to be thrust into the spotlight. And maybe you're right. Maybe YouTube will be the make or break. And shows will have to be on YouTube to be successful, and they'll all be battling it out to get the promotion love from YouTube, or maybe it'll be YouTube and a few other areas. Netflix might start carrying independent programming. Can you imagine if Netflix was carrying Revision 3 or Twit stuff, or other network stuff like that? So I don't think we've scratched the surface yet of where this is all going.
Yep, I agree. I just feel like we're just getting there, and it's super, super exciting to see what's going to happen. It could be a bloodbath, but whatever happens on the other side.
There will be baths of blood. Derrick, do you have a differing opinion, or are you kind of drinking the Kool-Aid with the rest of us?
I mean, I definitely see what you guys are saying in terms of, I think it's just the industry, any industry that look at it overall. Like whenever there's a new technology, you see an explosion of small startup companies. You see, just tons of new entrants and players because, there aren't too many barriers to entry. Everyone has a new idea, but exactly what you were saying, Tom, after time, I think you do have to start consolidating after a while. I think, the problem with a lot of these smaller streaming sites, they're cool in their niche, but, it's like as an advertiser, I need to buy, we're buying eyeballs and we need that large number. And so, I still end up going to CBS. I still end up going to NBC or Hulu or the big players just because they can quote me a huge number when I'm trying to do a mass reach, campaign for something. And I think that a lot of these smaller companies, eventually they'll have to consolidate in some way, shape, or form, or it has to be some company that kind of buys a whole bunch of them, puts them together and say, look, I have X, Y, and Z all together, and when combined, we have hit the, this number that you need to get. So, I think over time we're going to see a lot of consolidation, and we're going to see maybe new big companies come out. But I think at the end, I think it's still going to be major corporations. It just might be new players, new mixes of players coming in.
Yeah, in fact, the electronics industry might be a good analog for this, because I think what will happen is when suddenly a massive amount of people who aren't tech savvy necessarily suddenly have access to Roku players or internet channels on their television, all of a sudden some of these niche players are going to get huge. They're going to get big, and they're going to get big enough to get the advertising attention because of the size of their audience. And that's when the bloodbath is going to happen. And I think the electronics industry is an interesting parallel. When you look at, we came into the end of the 90s with what? Circuit City, Good Guys, CompUSA, Best Buy, a few other chains here and there across the United States. And after a decade of being able to buy your electronics online, we now have Best Buy.
Yeah.
You know, and Newegg, I guess, but Newegg isn't physical. It's online. So there really isn't a whole lot of brick and mortar left. Best Buy figured it out. Best Buy figured out how to do it well. Circuit City almost got there, but they didn't. And so I think you see something like that. Yes, our big business is going to stick around. Absolutely, they will. But they won't be the only ones. It'll be an amalgamation of them. Let's move on to the long-term predictions, and Andrew will stick with you. These are the more in 100 years we'll be in flying cars sort of predictions. What do you got?
So for mine, I draw a lot of my inspiration from kind of science fiction and that kind of thing. And for me, there's an anime and manga and films too called Ghost in the Shell. And the whole sort of premise of this is it takes place in the future where people kind of have there's that computer in your brain that's always connected to this, big ubiquitous network. And, you can kind of swap body parts out and upgrade body parts and that kind of thing. And if you watch the movies or you read the books, and I think it's really expanded on well in Standalone Complex, which was the 2 seasons of the anime that they did. It's so well portrayed in there that it seems completely feasible, and it just really just logical that this is where we go, so that we're always connected, and the interface is just kind of in our head, and we don't have to worry about the keyboard or the size, whatever, because it's all right there and it's inside.
Now, I haven't seen Ghost in the Shell, the first one, in a long, long time, and I haven't seen any of the subsequent follow-up stuff. Wasn't the point of that anime that they were kind of fighting against that all-controlling, all-knowing, connected all the time thing? Like, what do you fear in that way about that kind of impact, that always being connected either to each other or to central data or to whatever, either through implants or through whatever the interface is? How does that affect us culturally, for lack of a better word?
Well, that's the kind of the plot of the show. There always has to be a villain, right? And the villain in this case is usually a hacker, someone that can get in. And they do show a lot of examples of scary things that happen. People hacking into a politician's bodyguard and using the bodyguard to kill the politician. So there are definite risks that come along with something like this. But I think that it's just inevitable. There will definitely,
do you think the seeds of it are like, somebody in the chat room, Curtis B, says, are you talking about Facebook? And so I would throw it to you. Do you feel like Facebook and Twitter and the stuff right now we kind of benignly see as trendy stuff on the internet or whatever, do you see that as the seeds that will grow to be this thing? Like, these are the things that get us used to the idea of always sharing everything about ourselves and always being online, and eventually that turns into some other kind of new interface, which turns into some other kind of accepted way of doing things, which, without that slow progression, we would have never done. How do you feel about stuff like that today? Is Facebook a seed to your future? Absolutely.
Facebook, Twitter, all that, the whole, hey, me, this is what I'm doing right now. I want to tell you about me. I bet 90% of the time people spend on Facebook is telling other people about them, rather than, looking at what other people are doing. And I think that those type of things, those type of services, combined with our increasing dependence on being connected, the smartphone revolution that's kind of going on right now, that I need to be connected. They've done those experiments and ask people, would you rather go get rid of your girlfriend or your smartphone? And an increasingly large amount of people are choosing to go. They need that phone. They need that ability to be connected. And I think you give them the choice to build that in and not have to worry about it. I think that people are going to take it, and we're going to head in that way. Whether whether we like it or not, like I said, there'll always be a faction that's gonna, rebel against this and, see it as kind of an affront to nature or something like that. But, it seems that technology always wins out in the end.
So even Derrick, the Pope says, I'm sorry, Steve, or Scott.
Steve.
I did it again. Even the Pope says that you should embrace social networks, right?
He did. In fact, here recently, right? Didn't he just say that?
Yeah, he said that yesterday or over the weekend.
Pope blesses social networks. Who is my neighbor in this new world, he says.
Yeah.
Does the Pope Mobile have Facebook?
It does now. It's now the Wi-Fi Pope Mobile. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Facebook. Oh, you can find me on Facebook, but then it's under Steve. Just kidding. So what was I going to say? Oh, so Derrick, I was just going to ask you, how do you feel about, like, for me, when he brings this up, I'm forced to go, oh yeah, the stuff we're doing now is just kind of the infancy of this thing moving forward. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally, agree that I think that's definitely the direction we're moving into, and it actually eventually will go into my long-term prediction as well. But I think more and more we're feeling more and more comfortable, showing ourselves online. Just look at us now. We're streaming across to thousands of people, tons of people online, whether on laptop or cell phone or the Twitter app, and we're advertising ourselves to show more and more of ourselves online. I think that this interconnectivity, is only going to continue to grow over time.
Yeah. And somebody in the chat room mentioned, I wonder if the Pope plays Mafia Wars over Facebook. And I don't even know if we should see that particular thing as a sign that the Pope is personally using social media for anything.
Is there an encyclical on poking?
I don't know. It's actually kind of an interesting question. Obviously, what that represents is an answer to I don't know much about the Catholic faith in terms of how kind of the hierarchy works and how people communicate questions or whatever, and how the Pope kind of gives answers. But I'm assuming a lot of people are kind of going, this brave new medium. It's kind of I'm unsure whether I should embrace it or not, and I wonder what the Pope's feeling is on this, and they sort of whisper their way to the top, and he gives this grand answer that makes everybody go, oh, good, because I really like Facebook. I don't think it's an indication that he's...
I think it was just an @reply.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of time, though, before we see, the Pope or, between Sarah Palin, Obama, even just presidents now, politicians, they're jumping on board and they're starting to embrace, the social world, the social network, different social networks, Twitter, Facebook. And I think that just given a couple of generations, and I think we're going to see, us young people eventually take over, be in those positions of power and be comfortable, using these new media. But by then we might have other media that we have issues with. But I think it's just a slow progression of society just moving in that direction.
All right, let's move over to your long-term predictions, Derrick. Like I said, longer view predictions, more of the in 100 years the Pope will have a flying mobile. What do you what do you see on your long-term?
So I guess this kind of goes back into the whole chip in the brain, but I'm just looking at, pretty much how we're using, our iPhones and all these devices. And I think that it's going to eventually get smaller and smaller, where you might have something directly, in your brain. And if you think about it, your brain is what controls everything that you sense, everything that you perceive. And I think that, just like how, I guess, the whole augmented reality thing is a really cool thing, that people are starting to get into. I think that a chip in their brain might actually be an attractive thing where, if you want to enhance your senses, you can, put a chip in your brain where, for example, like sight. So now when you're looking out, maybe the chip in brain, you'll have a HUD display where pretty much as you're walking the street, you can see 50 meters to, this subway station. You're walking, down the street and you're like, and you see deals pop up when you're, when you want it to pop up, you'll see, deals just kind of light up. Maybe Google's behind it where it's like, 50% off shoes here and $5 off your Subway sandwich, and just cool deals with their, when it comes to taste. Maybe we're out of, when food's becoming an issue now where we have to eat gray goop, and suddenly now with that chip in your brain, it'll tell your brain that that gray goop you're eating tastes like steak, tastes like fish or or truffles or whatever, and it enhances the flavor, and you're content with it because that's, you're perceiving it in a much more positive way. And then I guess also with speech. So, as we're moving to cell phones and Twitters, I mean, imagine a way where you can eventually maybe just communicate through your head. Maybe through your head you can send an instant message or relay a thought, from one person to another, almost like ESP in the future. But, you're doing it through your head. And I think that, it can be spun in a positive way. It's not necessarily that you're being, I think, you see a lot of dystopian novels where it's like, you're getting controlled. But I think at least before we reach that dystopian future, I think what sells us through is like, you get a lot of these attractive offers. You make life feel a lot better by, having chip in the brain. So, I think I'd actually be up for that.
Oh, I missed part of that. Hey, I wanted to mention, well, let's get back to the food, taste, and better thing, because I think this has serious merit. No pun intended, Tom. No Tom intended.
What?
I love the idea that we can, because the gruel, this gray goop you're talking about, could actually be better for us. Like, it could be better constructed to fulfill whatever nutritional needs we have, so that we're not missing things. It could be perfectly formulated, for that matter, to be exactly everything we need in a meal, minus all the stuff that's bad for us that either makes us fat or that takes away the power of other nutrients or focuses too much on sugar or taste or whatever, and then just fake it like it tastes great. That's an awesome idea, and I'd embrace that. I got no problem with that. Just buy my green goop, decide today I want it to taste like something completely awesome, and whatever that may be. Steak is always coming to mind for some reason, and then I'm good, and I would be really happy about that. So that's a great idea. The other one, or the other idea, being able to sort of have it control how we perceive other things. Like, for example, I like the idea that I could talk to a Spanish friend who speaks fluent Spanish but no English, and I could understand him universal translator style, everything he said. That sounds great. But it seems like all this technology could be used for some pretty nefarious stuff. And essentially basically entering the matrix. We're in a pod, we don't know it because all of our sensory information is being fed to us artificially, and as far as we're concerned, it's real, unless we have, Morpheus giving us phones and telling us to walk out on the ledge. Without that, we have no idea. And that scares me just a little bit, but that food part, that's awesome. Love that.
Do you like that, Andrew? Would you want to eat the gray goop if it tasted like steak and eggs?
Well, I hope that maybe there was a solid form of it so that I wasn't, eating pudding and tasting steak. That could get a little bit.
Yeah, you need the texture to be right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, you go to the store, and instead of, the aisles and aisles of choices, you have, liquid goop, Jello goop and solid goop. I think that maybe that would help with that. Or maybe it's not even goop. Maybe it's like intravenous. At night you hook yourself up to it, and, you don't even have to go through the whole process, the whole, ceremony of eating. It happens. You don't even have to think about it anymore.
And you just have implanted memories of having eaten that steak.
Yes.
That's actually made of people.
Someone in the chat room also said that this already happened 10 years ago. So we shouldn't even be talking about it.
Well, that's the Matrix thing. Yeah. They put us in the computer simulation more than 10 years ago. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. Except that we don't really, because if we did, we'd wake up with like little tubes all over us. And
it's like being an alien. If you're an alien and you tell everybody, I'm an alien, which I do, no one believes you. That's funny, Tom. So the best thing to do is to hide it in plain sight. Hey, we're all living in a simulation. Sure, we are.
I like it.
All right, let's thank our sponsor, MailRoute. If you would like to get rid of some spam, go try mailroute.info. It's absolutely free to try, and it's good for anybody who hosts their own domain. Whether you manage it or not, somebody just needs to be able to know how to edit that MX record. And then you're routing all your mail to MailRoute. They take out the spam. They leave the good stuff in, the stuff that's actually meant for you, and you get it. And it works. I use it a lot. So try it out. Go to mailroute.info. Give it a spin. And if you are a Twit user, you actually get 10% off the life of your account. It's $2 per user per month for small businesses. Or if you're a single user, you're like, look, I just have my own domain. I'm not a big business. $30 per year to get rid of spam. It's pretty good. Try it out, mailroute.info. It's time for our crazy-ass predictions, and Derrick, will stick with you. This is the craziest prediction you could think of. Lay it on us. We want to hear it.
So I guess the crazy one that I have is that we'll eventually, I mean, you know, we're with the, I guess, the Large Hadron Collider, you know, we're trying to recreate the Big Bang. And I think eventually in the future, we're going to be able to create at least windows at first into alternate universes. We'll be able to create universes and actually look into, you know, parallel Earths and parallel timelines. And I guess eventually have that technology where we can tailor it so that we can, you know, look at pivotal decisions and I guess certain points of divergences where it's like, you know, should I invade this country? And they'll actually create a universe where, you know, I did go through that with that invasion and did it work out for the better or not? It's almost a simulation, but I guess you're actually creating that universe where it actually, you can see how it would have played out. And it would be, you know, something where you can look at just all different types of scenario. You can see, or even just create crazy universes where the laws of physics don't work the same way we do. The gravitational constant is different. Or eventually, when we can travel into them, maybe we can create worlds where there's more resources that we need.
I really like your baby step into the let's see it first before we can go in there. Like we'll get windows to it and kind of decide how to best approach it or whatever. That's kind of a cool concept. But once you're in there doing it, what is like? Will you be able to make a backup of yourself? So there's Derrick in this dimension, and being able to set a copy of yourself off or something into this other dimension, or follow your own other dimensionally persona through this new dimension and watch that play out. In fact, live it out. And if you die in that battle, no big deal, because other Derrick is still over there looking through the window. Like, how do you see your consciousness, you know, sort of beyond the veil of these different dimensions? What does it do? Is there a central one where you're kind of manipulating the other ones, or how do you see that?
Well, at first I was thinking more just like a window into the universe where you know, we're just kind of some weird, you know, interdimensional telescope where you can actually just see the events played out maybe from a fixed point of view, you know, almost like, you know, I guess if you're a higher power just looking at the world. But maybe you just have to sneak into that other universe and implant that chip in the head so that you can connect that to yours. So you'll have, you can relive, you know, that life.
So you could see in a dimension that you turned out to be a complete crackhead in one of these timelines.
Well, there's infinite
you just
universes.
Want to see that,
so,
right? Right.
Pretty much. There's a million things I wish I could, you know, that I would like to see, you know, if I had purple hair, or if Tom Merritt had one R instead in his name.
It would change everything.
It's crazy.
Oh man, the ripple effect from that would be enormous.
So here's my question: is what about the ethics of doing this? So, you know, we have our world where, you know, everything, you know, we can go and test out. Should the U.S. declare war on, you know, Liechtenstein? You know, and you know, before we go and we test out, and you know, we trick someone in, you know, universe X into going to war, and people over there are going to die. You know, there's real life implications. And even though it's, you know, maybe we're not going to necessarily see it because we're over here in, you know, in our universe, but, you know, there's another one of us over there, and there are other people with families and stuff. And then we find out, oh, you know, that wasn't such a great idea. And, you know, and because of our politics and our universe, people over there now die. So I wonder
you mean
about
Fringe?
I don't think it would be an issue in the sense that there's an infinite number of worlds and an infinite number of possibilities. So there's an endless, you know, string of alternate universes where there have been wars, and there's an endless string of universes where there hasn't been that war. We're not causing it to happen at first. Maybe, you know, right now it's just seeing whatever led to that war. You know, so we're not actually creating the universes. It's there. It exists. It's just right now, you know, finding, I guess, whether we create or not, it's really just creating a portal for us to view that other universe that already exists alongside ours.
So you're saying, okay, so instead of causing that war, we look for the universe where someone did cause that war.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're causing it because we're creating. Well, I mean, we might look like we're creating it, but essentially it already exists. Is so, you know, I guess it's semantics. You know, you might create it by, you know, making that particle shoot through the the giant collider and and the universe is created, but it's already existent, and just that action is more observing it. Whether once you start traveling to different Earths and doing things, maybe that's a different. That might be a more moral issue where should we invade Earth, Earth 2 and Earth 3 for their, gray goop.
Or their Superman.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
Right. Or their Commander Riker with a beard. But the main thing is if it's truly infinite universes you could have a window on, you could literally see a universe where in every way on the surface, Hitler was the impetus behind World War II starting and happening. And then you could go to another universe and see that Hitler was the impetus for starting World War II, but he also owned a poodle. You see what I'm saying? Like the variations, since it's infinite,
poodle.
can be every conceivable possible thing. In one universe, his mustache is a big flowing one that curls up on the ends. And the other one, he
there's
doesn't have a
also
mustache
definitely
at all.
an evil universe with there's definitely a universe with an evil scout with a mustache too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Of course there is. And there's a universe somewhere where I'm a half an inch shorter than I am right now. And there's another one where I'm a half an inch taller. And there's another one where this shirt is slightly more pink and less blue. And I mean, if you really get crazy with it, infinity is a freaking lot. So you'd want to be able to. This thing would have to be good at honing in on the big stuff. Like, this universe is lame. It's the same as this one, except I drank Pepsi instead of Coke. Boring.
So you just
want the ones
go in and do
where
a
this universe
Boolean
has a bunch
search,
of
right?
superheroes. Say again, what?
Just a big long Boolean search for the universe that you're looking for, right?
Gold
Right.
bullion search. Or is it chicken? Let's move to the alternate reality of Andrew's crazy ass predictions. When you look into your crazy crystal ball, what do you see?
Well, I can tell you that there's already something crazy going on because, Tom, the second you said you mentioned Fringe, I got a text message from my mom that said, "Oh my God, he mentioned Fringe."
Really?
So I don't know. I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe
I'm
already.
a big fan, Mom, of Fringe. And you.
So keeping with my kind of science fiction inspired predictions, I read a book last year that really kind of again, I felt like, man, it was presented so logically and it was so well done, and it was Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom by Cory Doctorow, and it basically sets up this future where death is not a factor anymore. So, your body gets old, it gets worn out, or you're tired of it, you want something different. Your consciousness is picked up and put into this, new body, and there you go. And in this world, people have all the time in the world. So anything, you want to have 100 PhDs, eventually you'll have that 100 PhDs, and you can go anywhere and you can do anything. And people kind of progress to the point where everyone has kind of done everything that they want to do. And so you have people that end up, their fantasy is to live in Disneyland and Disney World and, just have that kind of fantasy life and do what makes them happy and not what they have to do. And I think this is kind of the logical extension of, my 100-year prediction. Whereas, instead of maybe having mechanical parts or whatever, we have these, limitless amount of, human bodies that we can just pick our consciousness up out of and drop it into, and really have the ability to do all those things that, right now we just don't have the ability in our, 80 or 100-year lifespan to go and do. So
Is it something you can just kind of pick up and pull out anytime you want? You see it like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like if you say, I want to be that hot bikini model for a day, boop, you're in there. But what is she when you're not in there?
That's a good question. Like
Empty clone.
Yeah, or maybe you put it in a freezer, Ziploc bag until you're ready to come back, or
you go to Enterprise and rent your body.
Well,
exactly.
They'll bring it to you.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is if we want it to be simple, I want to be able to say, there's a blonde. I'll keep using her. Why not? She's surfing. And I want to be surfing, so I don't want to be in that. So I'm in there now, and I'm surfing. I'm like, yeah, this is great being a girl, but I got to worry about makeup or something. I don't like this anymore. Can I beam right back out to the hot dog stand guy, and she'll just go on the board and like drown, or how? I mean, how are we going to what the logistics of this are making my head spin?
Well, honestly, I didn't really see it as a hot swapping, like in the middle of, an activity or something. More along the lines of, you see that, the blonde surfer girl and go, you know what? I want a body like that with, the ability to surf, implanted in my brain. And, you go to your local body shop and you grab that body, and then you go to the beach. Not so much going, I want to be her, and then, you kick her out of her body and, and just kind of take over.
All right. So I go to the body shop, as you so perfectly put it. That's what it should be called. And I'm going to pick up that girl, and I'm going to have to carry her around in my car.
Gives another meaning to picking up a girl.
Right. Yeah, I could see this. I know some people that kind of do this now in a very different sort of way. But, yeah, this is an interesting future. I like the idea of being able to I want to try out other models before I die, Like, what's it like to be that guy who can run real fast? Or what's it like to be that 1,200-pound dude they had to move out of his house with a crane? I wanted to see the whole spectrum. That would be a cool future. Or we could just play around a little bit, go back to our regular stuff, but, give me a chance to at least see what it's like to be a hot surfer chick, and then, an accountant or something else.
Derrick, what body would you pick?
I would pick... Is yours for rent, Tom?
No, you don't want my body, especially right now. You sound like Bill Clinton all day. I don't think you want this.
I'm comfortable in my own body. I really can't think of anything else I'd want to be in it. I mean, it seems like it'd take a lot of. I mean, like, would you lose balance the minute you go to a taller body because you're not used to maybe being in a different size? In terms of abilities, I mean, like going to a different gender, you might start getting confused in how to perform basic functions. It sounds a little bit scary, I guess, when it comes to just, moving from one to another. In terms of professions, I mean, do you hold on to your memories? Are there memories that are already existent that you would, if you wanted to become that that blonde girl that surfs, would you be able to instantly become a surfer, or are you still the same person without that ability to surf, for example, and you're just in a new body?
Yeah, I think it ends up being more about immortality, where you have a body that you're comfortable with and you have 100 versions of it cloned, and when one of those versions starts to get a little old and broken down, you just switch to a different one. You go into the body shop and switch, they've got a bank of your clones and bring them out. A good one to look at is Richard Morgan's Altered Carbon. That's a book that deals with the idea of bodies are called sleeves, essentially, and your brain is always backed up to within a few minutes, and if you ever get killed or die, you just get downloaded into a new body. It's not always the one you want, though, if you're not very rich, so you got to watch out for that. Time now for 4 questions.
Yes, 4 questions. That's where we ask 4 questions, rapid fire style of our guests. You do not have time to think about it. You must answer from the gut. I hope you're both sitting comfortably. I'm going to start these off. I'm going to ask Andrew his questions. Andrew, are you ready?
I am.
Here we go. As foreshadowed in the Swamp Thing, those are comic books. How do you, I'm sure you knew that. How do you feel about an eventual plant/human pairing and its effects on human culture at large?
Wow.
From the gut, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I think what we would end up seeing is, I'm going to take the glass is half empty look here and say that we would probably see kind of a new form of racism, where keep the plant people down, separate schools for the plant people. I want to believe that we've kind of got past this, but it's like we've been through this so many times that we just never seem to learn that kind of lesson. And I think you introduce some plant people, someone that look radically different from the people that we have around us, and people just tend to react poorly to things that they're not familiar with.
Agreed. Next question. If you could, what famous movie robot would you put in place as the president of the United States?
What famous robot? I would have to say the T-800
Nice.
from the Terminator movies.
With an iron fist, literally.
Yes.
Yeah, that may happen. in real life. We'll see. What other food that has yet to be combined with bacon would you like to see in your future?
Is there a food that hasn't been combined with bacon?
Well, I mean, chocolate. Chocolate's been out for a while.
I'm going to say Tootsie Pops.
That's a great idea. Have a little piece of bacon in the middle of the thing. That's
How many licks does it take to get to the bacony center of a Tootsie Pop?
They'd have to put a cartoon pig in the tree and have him take that do that commercial again. All right, very nice. Lastly, let's see. What current tech mogul, like someone in the tech industry, has the best chance in the future to eradicate a disease with the help of his huge sums of money?
Bill Gates. I mean, he's already kind of on his way to doing this, right? With the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I mean, he's the guy that if you want someone to have money, you want the guy that's going to do the kind of things that Bill Gates has been doing with it. So I think that's probably the sure thing for that one.
Yeah, I hope people like Zuckerberg and others follow in his footsteps because he's doing amazing work. Those are your 4 questions you passed with flying colors. Tom, I believe you have questions for Derrick.
Yes, Derrick Chen, are you sitting comfortably?
Not really, but I'm ready to go forward.
Good, then we'll begin. Question number 1. Will we ever have billboards on the moon?
Yes. In fact, one will be so big that you're going to be able to see the sign straight from Earth.
I can see
selling Grey Goop.
So many neighborhood associations protesting this already. Question number 2. When will the world government finally be achieved and how?
In 3173, after the aliens tell us are invading Earth because the Grey Goop was actually their grandmothers. We invaded their nursing home, scooped up that Grey Goop, kind of like Futurama, but it turned out to be their grandparents.
Write it down, people. You heard it here first. 3173. It always takes the aliens to unite the government. Everybody's against the UN and their black helicopters till the aliens show up. Question number 3. Happy pill. When it's invented, will you take it?
Yes, because I would be depressed that I'm the only person not taking the happy pill.
And question number 4, which terrestrial species will be the first to pass us in intelligence?
Ooh, I think we've been passed already. We just don't realize it. They left Earth a while ago, and actually are the aliens that are coming back. So the dinosaurs actually
the dino people exactly. Yeah,
they evolved in space, and now they're putting their grandparents in nursing homes in the form of Grey Goop.
It's all ties together.
You just insulted the dolphins.
You have the plot of Derrick Chen's next novel in those 4 questions. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure.
That brings us to the end of our show. Thank you guys so much for putting up with my Bill Clinton voice. I think it's hot, Tom. I think I'm a little uncomfortable with you saying that, Scott.
I think we're going to be talking like that in the future, Tom. So
that's right. It's all I'm just ahead of my time. Derrick Chen, let folks know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, so I'm part of the G-Men Show. You can also find me at dxstuff.com. But the best way is probably at DerrickC82, DerrickC82 on Twitter. And
Frontline, I can call him just Frontline because I know him so well. Andrew, where can people find you?
You can also find me, thegmenshow.com. It's also at the G-Men Show on Twitter. I'm at Frontline99. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me on Twitter. And if I may, one last prediction, very short term, February 6th, Steelers by 10.
Whoa.
There you go. I think that may be the shortest term prediction we've had on FourCast. Scott, anything else before we say goodbye?
Negative, sir. I enjoyed my time. Grateful to have these guests here, and cannot wait for next week. Don't forget, though, if you are interested in hearing Tom and I 3 days a week outside of FourCast, you can catch us on Current Geek at currentgeek.com, where we talk about geeky stories on the web. It's there for your intake.
Magically, my voice sounds perfect in today's episode.
Weirdly. Yeah. And Wednesday and Fridays as well.
Don't forget to leave comments on our website, fourcastpodcast.com, or send us an email, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
But it's only 32 years away.
Dude.
Was that made? Somebody just put that in the chat room? That's awesome. How many licks does it take to get to my hindquarters in the center of that Tootsie Pop?